Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And this is the show that is trying to make the world safe for ADHD. I am a clinical neuropsychologist. I have a private practice. Probably at least half of my time, if not a little more, is with ADHD, doing evaluations, working with adults, children, families, pretty much the whole shooting match. I also have a child, an adult now actually, he's no longer a child, who has ADHD, and we went through quite a lot actually with that one, just based on the fact that at the time when he was young, nobody knew much about ADHD. We didn't have the luxury of research, the surety that there was indeed such a thing. Even the evaluation procedures were not very well established back when he was a child. And even though I was then a neuropsychologist and have been ever since then, I didn't know a lot about it. And I didn't know a lot about what exactly to do with it and how to make things work out, or even what things I needed to work out. I mean, it was a very confusing time, as I'm sure you're getting aware of. And I probably, in the throes of trying to start a business and raising a couple of other kids and traveling around the country, I probably made just about every mistake you can make with an ADHD child. So, as a result of newer learning for me, I wrote a book called ADHD Strategic Parenting. And the focus of that was that you have to plan long-term for an ADHD child. Most folks don't spend a lot of time thinking about whether it's long-term or short-term, but long-term is strategic, is what you want your child to grow up to be, the adult you're trying to help build, if you will. Tactical is clean your bedroom up right now. That's a short-term thing, and it's not very, it doesn't really matter, honestly. Most of the time, the things you argue about, the daily stuff, isn't all that important. I remember my older boy, who does not have ADHD, matter of fact, probably has the opposite of ADHD, whatever that is. He was, great at home. The minute he went off to college, he was a pig. I mean, his room was scary, dirty, and messed up, and just not at all what we hoped for. And now he's an adult, he's married, he's got kids. Things are clean. And so things do work out. But the thing I want to talk about is because I'm always emphasizing that you don't punish a child for stuff he can't control. I mean, punishing an ADHDer for not paying attention, think about that. That's the problem they have, and you're going to punish them for that. It's a neurologic condition. Well, you're going to punish them for that? Like I said, it's like punishing this kid with cerebral palsy for flapping his arm. He can't control it, so what's the point of punishment? But there's a balance you have to achieve, okay? You can't just let them get away with murder because they have ADHD, and that's the topic of today. ADHD is a reason for their behavior, but it doesn't excuse them out of everything, okay? they still have to live in the real world. And part of living in the real world is learning how to handle that ADHD stuff that you were born with. The impulsivity, the hyperactivity, the need for stimulation, the difficulties concentrating, the difficulties with time management, the difficulties with organization. They have to learn how to handle all that. And they aren't going to do it today. It's going to take years over time for them to develop strategies. And part of the problem is that they have to develop their own strategies. I see all the time, I see school systems in my area handing out these fancy organizers, that are definitely obsessive compulsive sort of checklist sort of oriented things. And ADHD kids just won't use those. That's not the way their brain works. That's not the way they organize stuff. One of the things you notice a lot about ADHDers is that they are what I call lateral organizers. Okay? I'm not a lateral organizer. Okay? For me, I am a vertical organizer. I put things in file folders and put file folders with names on them in alphabetical order in a file drawer. I have a very close relative who is a lateral organizer. That is, every flat space has stuff on it. And only she can find stuff in there. I look at that and it's just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I can't do this. But she can find it. And that's, a lot of times that's what you get with an ADHD child. They are lateral. Any flat space, there'll be a pile of stuff on it. As long as they know what's in the pile, no problem. If that really bothers you, get some clear tubs, the ones with the plastic covers on them, and so that they can see what's in them, and organize them that way. Or also you can organize them with by color, And a lot of ADHDers are more color oriented. They prefer that to like the alphabet or something. So they want all the math stuff in the green tub, and they want all the English stuff in the red one, and so on. But the thing you want to recognize is that you don't want to go overboard with excusing your child because he or she has ADHD. You have to recognize they've got some problem areas, and you need to recognize that it's up to you as the parent to figure out how to mentor them through these problems so that at the other end they can at least survive in the real world. Or I guess that's the real world out there. I'm not always 100% sure. But just understand that ADHD is not an excuse for all things. You'll get into real trouble if because they will start using that on you. They're all little con men and con women, right? The minute they figure out an edge, oh God, I can use this and I'll get away with all kinds of things. Well, you don't want that. You cannot have that. Because once they leave your tender embrace, the real world is not going to be that concerned with what kind of problems they're having. And I've seen over the years, with my patients, I have seen some people who just adapted and adjusted marvelously and have gone to good colleges and all that other stuff. And I've seen others who have never held a job for more than 6 or 8 months, have been married 2 or 3 times, and have had numerous broken relationships in between the marriages. Just haven't learned to adapt and adjust. Haven't learned to get on with life in the real world. And one of the things that I find it's a relatively new concept actually, but I love it, is that ADHDers, it's not that they can't pay attention. As a matter of fact, it's kind of the opposite, is they have troubles because they pay attention to everything at the same time. But they are particularly good at things they're interested in. William Dodson, who's a psychiatrist, and I love the way he thinks about this stuff. He writes that ADHDers have an interest-based attention system. That is, if they're interested in it, they can pay attention to it. Matter of fact, sometimes they pay so much attention to it that they get what we call hyper-focused, and they get into like the zone, and they just keep going and going and going. Sometimes skipping meals and sleep and all kinds of stuff to do whatever they're doing. Now, I would posit that it is your job as a parent to help them find that thing that they are so interested in and figure out ways to use that interest to make a living. They're going to pursue the things that they're really interested in, so you might as well be helpful in that area. And it's not necessarily that everything's going to come up sounding like it's an obvious job, but you can figure out ways that it can become one. If your child is just a techno whiz and just loves it and is not gonna, doesn't ever want to be off the computer, you got it made, man. That's easy. There are all kinds of jobs out there, all kinds of work for people who are super interested in computers to do. And I've seen a lot of folks who are, so interested in it that they get, degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees in whatever they call, what we used to call computer science, information technology or something like that, I think. But they found an interest, and it was a good one for them to pursue. You don't always know what that's gonna be, but it's up to you to, you need to be looking at. You get a harder job than the parent of a neurotypical kid. Neurotypical kids just do what they're told, basically. They go along with what society wants them to do, what their teacher says they should do, what the education system says they should do, and on and on and on. ADHD kids, not so much. They have to go with what they're interested in, what they find easy to focus on. And you need to help them in the sense that you need to be watching and finding strength areas. You need to be the guy who does a functional analysis, if you will, of your child. What is he or she good at? What do they naturally do? What falls to their hand easily? That kind of stuff. That's what your job is. And you have to help them find that. And the two things, okay, you help them find that interest area. And then the other thing is they need to get to adulthood with a reasonable amount of self-esteem, okay? And for an ADHD kid, it's harder, okay? Because school is such a pain. They have so much trouble with school. The system is just not set up for them. I would argue that the system we have currently in the United States is not really set up for much of anybody, but I'll argue that out with some politician sometime, I suppose. But they are forced into a system that requires absolute compliance, requires great organization and time management, requires them to do what they're told when they're told to do it. All things that these kiddos have troubles with. And so a lot of times, what do? You mention how frustrating that is. It's like somebody plopped you down in a class in China, and it's taught in Chinese, and you don't speak it. that would be frustrating day after day, week after week, year after year. So your job is to try to build up their self-esteem, to have them see themselves as problem solvers, as people who don't give up. I mean, those are the big issues that ADHDers need. So as a parent, you're trying to build their confidence and build their view of themselves as a person who solves problems, who's competent, okay? And that means you praise effort. You praise how hard they do stuff, how hard they work, how hard they have studied. Regardless of results, you praise that, okay? You never praise the sort of abstract things that they can't really control, like intelligence. Oh, you're so smart. Okay, well, if I am by definition smart, that means I don't have to work very hard, right? And that's the problem you get into. Some folks have, kids that seem to be brighter than average. That is measured by the fact that they do better than average in school, or they seem to know a lot about some special topic or something like that. That doesn't necessarily make them smarter than anybody else. Matter of fact, some cultures don't even have the concept of intelligence. They figure if you did better, you worked harder. Simple as that. And in a lot of ways that works. I know of people who are measured by the traditional IQ tests aren't very smart, but they're so darn determined that they get through medical school. What are you going to do? What are you going to say? So, but praising just intelligence is going to get you in trouble. Okay, because sooner or later, no matter how smart the kid, sooner or later they're going to hit an academic level that's difficult for them. And then the only thing they've got to do, the recourse they have, is to buckle down and start working hard. And if they don't have much experience doing that, they're not going to do well with it. You haven't prepared them, okay? You praise them for their effort. You praise them for how hard they studied. You praise them because they made the effort, because they tried. Okay? You do not praise, some abstract thing that they don't have any control over. Because that will get you some problems with self-esteem. You have to praise the things they know they can control. And I can't emphasize that enough, but that's really important for raising this, particularly an ADHD kid. And the other thing is, you have to have the concept that there are no absolute failures, or for that matter, absolute victories in life. There are things you like relatively well, relatively good things. There are things that are kind of bad things. But all of the things that you don't do well on are situations that you can learn from. So you want to emphasize that. Okay, you tried to do this, you tried to study this way. Didn't work out very well, I guess, right? So what do we need to do different next time? What can we learn from this kind of thing? And it takes time. Okay, you have to spend time. You have to spend time with these kids. And there's no doubt about it. So your job is to help them find that interest area, that thing that they can just naturally hyper-focus on. And the other part is to build their confidence and self-esteem and all that sort of thing. And you do that mostly by being patient, praising effort, praising trying, praising how hard they studied and all that sort of thing. Okay, that's me for this week. Got a new one for you though. As I said, I am a neuropsychologist. I'm also a high performance coach. and I kind of specialize in ADHD entrepreneurs. I'm going to start another Facebook Live show at 3 o'clock this afternoon. We're calling it High Performance Entrepreneurs, and it's about ADHD people who are entrepreneurs. And I'll talk some about why that's such a good fit. Okay? Might be helpful for your young person. But anyway, so that'll be at 3 o'clock this afternoon. And remember, this is the Dr. G's ADHD Chats, the show that's trying to make the world safe for ADHD, because people who think inside the box don't change the world, but people who think outside the box, like your child, will change the world. So we want to give them the best shot at doing that, because Lord knows we need some changes. Okay, I'll catch you next week. Terry James Gingras. I can be reached at, in addition to the usual thing on Facebook, I can be reached at terrygingrasphd.com. It's my website. Okay, we'll see you.